Okay, guys, so we are going to go over the Act 1 study guide. So go ahead and click on the home page, open that up, and here we are. And those of you who are watching this later, of course, you can pause and fast forward through any of this to go through it more quickly. Okay, if you look at the beginning, these are vocabulary words. And so just read through those, make sure you know those words. The literary terms. All these literary terms come with something here for the example. If we had more time to go over the play in detail, I would fill in examples for all these things. But because we are running through this so quickly, then I'm not going to worry about examples. But just make sure you know these literary terms. An aside is when an actor speaks directly to the audience. A lot of times they'll cup their hands, like in a Shakespeare play. They'll cup their hands. Sometimes they'll turn their head away from everybody else, which is a signal that this is an aside. And that means the people on stage cannot hear what the person is saying, but the audience can. Okay, blank verse is unrhymed iambic pentameter. We're actually going to cover that when we get into Act 2. Characterization is how an author develops a character's personality, motives, etc. A conflict is the problem experienced by the protagonist, so that'd be Romeo and Juliet in this case. And you have external conflicts and internal conflict. A couplet is a two-line unit of poetry. An epithet is a descriptive title. For example, good Mercutio, gentle Romeo, fiery Tybalt, one of those kinds of things. And figurative language is non-literal, imaginative language. Okay, foil. We've talked about this at various times over the year, but a foil is a character who has the opposite traits of the character in focus. So if you take Benvolio and Tybalt, for example, they're both cousins, one of Romeo, one of Juliet. One is a peacemaker and one is really combative. So you see their characteristics in contrast to the other. So they're foils. Romeo and Mercutio. Romeo is really sincere and lovesick, and Mercutio pops off, mocks everything, especially love. And of course, foreshadowing is a hint about what will happen in the future of the story. All right, and some of these poetic things I'll just save until we get to Act 2, when we see them in action. Okay, so let's move to the prologue. And again, I'm going to leave time for you guys to copy this as we go. All right? All right, so in what city does this play take place? Okay, someone tell me. All right, I know everyone was thinking it. Verona, Italy. And guys, please let me know if I'm going too fast. I will slow down for you. Okay, number 2, why are Romeo and Juliet called star-crossed? If you look in the No Fear Shakespeare, it just says they're unlucky lovers. I think it's deeper than that. I think it means that fate is against them. So it's not just a matter of luck. Fate is actively against them. No matter what they do, it's going to turn out poorly. Okay, so fate is against their relationship. Okay, the question is, do we have to make it in the form of a sentence? Typically I think answering questions in sentence form is okay, but there's probably some of these where I'm just going to write the words. So this is your study guide, so it's really up to you. All right, let's get into scene 1. Who is arguing / bantering at the beginning of the first scene? Well, the reason I say arguing / bantering is because they are arguing, but it's really more of a playful banter between friends. Okay, So Samson and Gregory, who are Capulet men. So that one's not a complete sentence. Samson and Gregory, who are Capulet men. We don't know what level of servant they are. I don't think they're very high up. Okay. Question number 4, who do they try to fight with? They try to fight with Abram, who is a Montague man. All right, can anyone remember the name of the person who tries to break up the fight?
Benvolio?
Exactly, and who is Benvolio? Romeo's cousin. All right, Romeo's cousin Benvolio. I think it's actually pretty significant that it is a high-ranking family member who tries to break it up. It shows that there's at least some interest in some of the families to stop the feud, or at least to minimize the feud. All right. Question 6, what threat does the prince make to Lord Montague and Lord Capulet? So he threatens, death to whoever fights. I think it's a little ambiguous if he's threatening, Montague and Capulet for death if their men fight with one another. I probably think that it's safe to say that whoever gets caught fighting again will be put to death. So whoever fights again will be executed. All right, question 7. Benvolio and Montague describe the way Romeo has been acting. Oh, I got some answers in here already. Okay, he's been sad, crying all the time, staying by himself. We didn't cover that scene in our reading of it. They edited that scene out in the play, so the only place we get that is here in our study guide. They talk about his behavior, and he's been sad, he's been crying, he's been staying by himself. Okay, why is Romeo so sad? Explain. Oops. Okay, the woman he loves, and I'm going to put her in parentheses, Rosaline, does not love him and intends to not marry anyone. We find out that a little bit later in a little more detail. But according to Romeo, she is not ever going to marry anybody. So what that means to Romeo is he doesn't even have a shot. Okay, what has Benvolio's advice to Romeo? He tells Romeo to forget Rosaline and look at other women. The actual quote that he uses is examine other beauties. It's really easy to criticize these guys as, you know, only being interested in a girl's looks and all that stuff. But you got to understand their society is, you know, the young men and the young women did not hang out with one another. And, you know, they didn't date. So basically, you know, marriages were arranged. It was arranged by the parents. And so you really have very little basis for picking someone other than who their family was, what they looked like, all those kinds of things. The idea of you know, people meeting each other, dating and marrying for love is a relatively new phenomenon in the history of the world, right? But back in ancient times, and in even now in some parts of the world, it's just not done that way. So Romeo looks like a little bit of a cad, so does Benvolio, but I guess that's just the way it was. All right. You can ask your grandparents what the word cad means. It's kind of an old word. Okay, 10. Why does Capulet think it will be easy for Montague and him to keep the peace? Because they are old and don't have the same fighting spirit as young men. Capulet just flat out says, I think it should be easy with men as old as we to keep the peace. It's because they're old. Okay, question 11. And again, let me know if I'm going too fast. What does Paris ask Capulet about? He wants to marry Juliet. We get from the context that he has asked Capulet this before, because when Capulet responds, he says, by saying, or what I have said before. So he has said before that Juliet is too young. All right, so question 12 is, what is Capulet's first answer? So um, 2 more summers pass before she is old enough. Okay, now 2 summers, it's always interpreted as 2 years. It doesn't necessarily mean 2 years. Could be a year and a half, right? If it's winter time, the next summer is half a year away, and then the next summer is a year away. But we get from the context later on that it is summer in the play. And so when he says, let summer, 2 more summers pass, he really does mean 2 years. So I'm going to say 2 full years when Juliet will be around the age of 16. Okay, so Juliet is 13 now. She's almost 14. We can figure out from context later on that she is about 3 weeks shy, a little less than 3 weeks shy of her 14th birthday. So she's 13. And so when she's close to 16 or 16, that's when she's going to be old enough. All right, 13. A bit later, Capulet appears to change his mind about Paris's question. What does he then tell Paris? He invites Paris to his party where he can see all the beautiful young ladies of Verona. I think this is where we start to see Capulet's true intention here. He would really love Juliet to marry Paris. That would be a great move for his family. Okay, it'd be a great move for Juliet. Juliet's in the highest non-royal family, so if she marries a non-royal, the best she can do is a lateral move. And if she marries below, then she's moving down. Paris is like the only guy who gives her a chance to move up, right? So that's good for Juliet, and it's good for him as well. And so, of course, he wants Juliet to marry Paris. And so inviting Paris to the party and saying, Paris, look, come check out all the other women, you'd almost be like, no, why are you doing that? You know, what if he falls in love with someone else? I think that Capulet is just very confident that Juliet is going to, Paris will think Juliet is above all of her peers, right? She is the most eligible young bachelorette of Verona. So I think it's kind of a negotiating tactic. Okay, now this is where the point of convergence between Romeo and Juliet starts to come together here. 14, what problem does the servant have? I know we've talked about this already, but I'll reiterate. Capulet gives the servant a guest list. Read the guest list and go invite all these people. However, we find out that the servant cannot read. So he has to go out and find somebody who can read. And the person he finds to read the list is Romeo. And that's how Romeo and Benvolio find out about the party. So question 14, what problem does the servant have? He can't read the guest list. Capulet gives him. So he has to find somebody to read it to him. I'm just going to put in parentheses because it's not really an answer to the question. So he finds Romeo and Benvolio. Okay, question 15. What is the name of the woman Romeo loves? And this is where we find out her name. The whole time Romeo and Benvolio are talking about her previously, they don't ever say her name. And so this is where we find it. Her name is Rosaline. And she's actually related to the Capulets. She's like a Capulet niece or something like that. All right. What do Romeo and Benvolio decide to do? They decide to crash the party. Benvolio to see all the women, and Romeo to see Rosaline. Okay, let's get into scene 3. How old is Juliet? We talked about this already today. She is 13, but will be 14 in less than 3 weeks. All right, when Lady Capulet asks Juliet how she feels about marriage, what is Juliet's answer? And I'm going to use a quote here. She says, "It is an honor I dream not of." It's interesting, she's being respectful of the customs and, all that kind of stuff. So she understands the honor of it, but she does admit that she's not really looking for it right now. Maybe Juliet's just thinking she wants to finish middle school before she gets married. I don't know, maybe. All right, following Juliet's answer, what does Lady Capulet tell Juliet? She tells Juliet that Count Paris wants to marry her. Okay, the title Count Paris, that just shows that he's really part of the royal family. Count is his title. They also call him County Paris. Sometimes they say count, sometimes they use county. I think Shakespeare just switches it to get the syllable count right in the line because he's writing in poetry. All right. According to Mercutio, who's Queen Mab and what does she do? We really skipped over this part. She's the fairy's midwife. There's really a lot more to that whole dream than we will be able to cover. I was thinking about maybe doing a video explaining that whole Queen Mab dream just for anybody who is interested. If you are interested in that, just send me a text or a chat or something like that to see if it's worth my time to really explain that. Okay, what does Mercutio say about dreams? They are the children of an idle brain. Okay, and since he's having a crazy dream, he's admitting that his brain is idle, that he's got nothing good to do or think about, so he's just idle. Okay, 22, what is Romeo's mood at the end of this scene? Romeo is apprehensive about going to the party because he thinks someone will die as a result. And guess what? He's right. Okay, I just looked at my watch. We're kind of running out of time here. So let's go through these quickly. What does Romeo think the first time Juliet sees her? I'll put a quote. She doth teach the torches to burn bright. So she is the most beautiful girl he has ever seen. How does Tybalt recognize Romeo? By his voice. When Tybalt is ready to seize Romeo and throw him out of the party, what does Capulet say to Tybalt? To leave him alone and ignore him. Okay, explain the conversation between Romeo and Juliet, and that's what we spent our time with at the beginning. And I'm just going to say, I'm going to kind of sum it up. Romeo uses religious imagery to persuade Juliet to kiss him. All right. How does Romeo find out Juliet's last name? The nurse tells him. And then, of course, how does Juliet find out about Romeo's last name? And the nurse tells her. And I'll leave this on screen here so you guys can get those last few things. All right. Hold on.